Well, for a change in Scotland, it's a very nice day, but I've got a lot of work to do on this car, and it's going to take me more than just one day. But I'm going to strip off the inlet manifold, because I'm going to do an EGR delete, swirl flap delete, I'm going to do the valve clearances, fix some leaky oil pipes, find a boost leak, and I'm going to do all of that over the course of the next week or so before I have to use this car again for a motorsport day. I've had this car for just over a year now, just over 200,000 miles. I've done about 8,000 miles in it. You probably don't need to see this entire thing, so I'll just cut together a bit of a montage and I'll stop with whatever tips that I discover along the way. I've had a few pipes rubbing, which is normal on an engine of this age. At the back of the engine, this loom, instead of having the loom route over this plug, the loom was routed under it, and that has caused it to rub. Goodness knows how long that's been there, but you can actually see the corrugations from this loom where it's been rubbing on the pipe. It's not supposed to touch that pipe, so once you get it routed correctly, it's no longer rubbing. And there's lots of little things like that, like the relay wire was too far up here, and so that was rubbing. Some of these hose pipes over here were rubbing. There was a rubber line underneath that injection pipe because the vacuum pipe wasn't routed correctly. So it's just a chance to fix those sorts of things while I'm in here. Last time I did this, I tried to save time by stripping off as few parts as possible, but it took me a lot longer in the long run. So what I'm going to do this time is strip off some of the surrounding parts to give me access to speed up everything else. Intercooler pipe has been leaking since I did my body lift. So all of this is coming off so I can clean it up, find the leak. I suspect it's just because of this old pipe. But while I'm in there, clean everything up. I'm going to take off first the airbox. Power steering reservoir's got to come off. The viscous fan coupling for the power heater. The loom, the inlet manifold, the rocker cover. I'm just going to start taking off all the pieces around the outside to give me more access to get in there. And I'll start with the engine first and then move on to bumper, front wings, etc. Once I get the engine mechanical sorted. I've just popped off the inlet pipe. There's a lot of oil on the inside, a lot of oil and garbage. The pipe's down at the front. Again, see, leaking oil down the side. And I think it's just because of an imperfect seal now that the body lift is up. Because this piece, which branches over the chassis rail, that's mounted to the, well, it's mounted to the frame, and the engine has come up, so these are all under a bit more tension. So all of these pipes have been just weeping oil a bit. Look at all that oil. Just because it wasn't perfectly fitted. The other place is interesting is because this is rubbed. So I think same issue where there's been a rub on the pipe because of an imperfect fit, and so there's lots of corrosion on the side of it. There's also a friendly squirrel made a big nest while the car was in the body shop, so I'll need to hoover all that garbage out. That alternator looks like it has been replaced, and so does the turbo. Actually, the turbo is remarkably clean on the back side of it, so I think this has had a turbo and an alternator in the last few years. Ooh, what do we see down there? A little 12mm socket down there. Bonus. I think everything's now disconnected. Oh, beautiful. Look how clean that is. The EGR is already blocked. In fact, I'd wager, yes it is. A previous owner has done the EGR block plate, so now I don't have to. Brief pause. Here is a way that I've found to frustrate myself. Every time I go anywhere near one of these, I snap off the little breather tube here. Snapped it off. It just gets so brittle with age. Fortunately, there's a Toyota and Denso part number on the side of it, so I just buy replacements from the Toyota Yaris and they work fine. Wow, what a difference. Oh my goodness. Still some carbon. Compare that to what I had on my old Land Cruiser. Insert video if I can find one. That's remarkably clean. I'm pleased with that. Great. Next step, swirl flap delete. Since I've come this far, I bought a kit from Rough Tracks which has every gasket for the 4.2 litre. Now, technically this is for the 1HD-FTE rather than the FTE, but it comes with most of the stuff, like exhaust manifolds the same, turbo gaskets are the same, gasket for the rocker cover is the same, swirl flap gaskets are the same. That's these thicker rubber ones. So I've got a new set of those to put on. While I'm in here, new gaskets wherever I see one. These are particularly useful because these are for the injector pipes. These go to the side of the block. The old ones are prone to deteriorating and then leaking. And they spill diesel down your engine block. Let's not have that. We'll put new ones in. It's been a few days. It's now dark. It's raining. It has rained non-stop since I started this job. And I have reached an impasse. Let me show you. Some of you might have seen my cry for help video, where I explained that the second cylinder cover is fused. Now, the first one came off. It's a piece of cake. It's just held on with a bit of adhesive foam. See that there? Comes off no problem though, not a big deal. This one on the other hand, I need to take this off to do the valve clearances, but I am going to take the coward's way out. I am not going to do it. I have tried hammering it, I've tried levering it, I've tried heating it. The only thing that I haven't done is attached it to an engine crane and yanked it up through the bonnet. I'm not going to do that. I am going to wait until I have like new injectors to do or something like that. I'm just going to cause myself more hardship. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to reassemble the engine with the swirl flap and EGR delete. But I'm not going to dismantle that cylinder head cover. I think that way lies pain. However, I have my EGR delete ready. My inlet heater screen is gone. This is already cleaned, so I don't have to do it. I have treated myself to a tiny stubby ratchet so that the last bolt at the firewall, I can get this teeny tiny little ratchet in there instead. I'm going to do some reassembly in the rain. This job will now piece together over multiple days of reassembly. Get the inlet manifold back in now. Can't do this without all my hands, so I'm going to have to put the camera down. Right, having taken the coward's way out, I have put in a new rubber gasket between the inlet manifold and the swirl flap plate. Now I need to do, oh please excuse the wind, what a day. Now I need to do the 12mm bolts with their little special rubber washers. I'm going to do all of them, including the annoying one at the back, then start stitching everything back up again. I'm not going to do the valve clearances. I don't want to bust this open. Whatever's glued that down, I'm going to cause more problems than I solve. So I'll just save that job until I'm going to do an injector clean also. Here's a tip that you might find useful. If you're in a work area that's a bit tight and you're banging your hands, you can rotate the fastenings so that they're out of the way of the work area, and now you can get your hand down here without scrubbing your knuckles on these. So there's a few more at the back of the engine here. Like I'm trying to work in this area, and every time I put my hand in here, I get hurt on this thing. And so what am I going to do? Give myself more space, grab it with my pliers, move it around to a place where I'm not going to get spiked by it. Now that's pointing upwards. I've got a bit more space so I don't get my hands smashed. There's another one at the back there. Rotate it round. Give myself a bit more space so that I don't smash my hands and my knuckles on those. That's just a small tip that you might find useful. Here's another one. Radiator hose. I want to work below it here, so I'm going to spin this round to the top so that I don't smash my fingers, and I've got slightly better access to the bolts underneath it. Sorry for the terrible camera angles. Two little tips for the back bolt. get yourself a tiny little stubby ratchet. That's maybe, I don't know, 3 inches long, or 2 inches if you ask my wife. That will help you get in the back there, and I'll show you how to get your hand in. What you want to do, boys and girls, is get your hand under next to the starter motor, and then you can come back up under the vacuum lines, and that gives you access to touch the bolts at the back. That's the secret. Put your hand down by the starter motor. That way you can get your stubby ratchet down there on the nut. Another thing you must try and do is catch as many of these little rubber coated washers as you can. It's like a little layered aluminium and rubber. They come off the bolts. Catch as many of them as you can, or you'll have to order them for like £1 a time from Toyota and wait. That can stop your job from progressing, so try and catch as many of them as you can. They fall down onto the injection pump, and they fall on the starter motor, and some of them fall down on the floor. Catch as many as you can. Couple of things on these injector pipes. Folks say that you have to replace them every time you remove them, and I think that's just nonsense. They're aluminium, but they're not that brittle. Just be careful not to get any dirt in the nozzles when you put it back in. Don't bend anything down here. If they don't fit perfectly, it's probably because you're putting it in the wrong place. Like, the one I always get wrong is number 1 cylinder, which actually goes behind the number 3. So here it is going behind number 3. I always get that one wrong, and I think, oh, this just isn't sitting right. But rather than bend it, I just stop and I regroup and I find the right place for it. Once they're all in the right place, there's no need to bend them, there's no need to replace them. Just mark them with your paint pen or something so that you can get them back in the right place. And I always find it's easier to feed them down from the top rather than feeding the injector end up through this power heater bracket. So I put the pump side, feed them down that way to reconnect. Although I do think I've just made a boo-boo because I've put the last 3 pipes on before I've used my spanner to tighten up the ones at the back. So I'm going to have to take these 3 off and tighten the ones at the back first. Well, those moved out the way quite easily so that I can get access to the ones that I didn't do properly. This is a useful thing to have. It's a 17mm brake pipe spanner, but it is 6-sided rather than using a spanner. It's much less likely to slip. Basically, you can put it over the pipe, slide it on, tighten it up without a chance of it slipping on the nut. Maybe that's why people recommend that you replace them every time, because you just chew them up. You could always just not do that, and then you won't have a problem. Put these ones back on. Try not to force them into any places. Just be chill. As they would say in South Africa when I lived there, just be lekker. Be cool. Be chill. Everything's gonna be alright. New gaskets in here and swirl flap delete plate. EGR delete is in now, along with removal of the piping. And the original block plate is still there. That's been fit to the car for a long time. And I just need to get a hold of a couple of new bolts to hold this injection pump on, because that's, the pump cover. Here's another tip for you. Whatever you do, don't forget to put on these pipe clamps, because these 2 studs, although they have an E5, like an external Torx, E-Torx 5, they don't come off, they only shear off. So whatever you do, don't forget to put the pipe clamp on first before you fasten up all your injection pump lines, or you'll have to strip off the whole lot and start again, like I did. Now for the fun part, which is not the fun part, of getting the cover back on there. That's a pain in the bum. I'm probably going to have to take this power steering header back off. I did that in the wrong order too. There's also a friendly squirrel made a big nest while the car was in the body shop, so I'll need to hoover all that garbage out. These trees aren't native to my area, so I know that that hasn't happened here. Now that I no longer have this EGR cooler pipe, This was mounted there around the back of the engine and onto the exhaust manifold there. Now that that's no longer there, I need a way of joining up these two coolant pipes, which are down here. And what I've gone for is either nylon or polypropylene 14mm pipe coupler. And all I'm going to do is fire one end into the other, one-handed also. That completes the loop, and then I'll bring it down lower in the engine bay so that it doesn't create a high point and get a bubble of, create an airlock. But that will solve the problem of the water leak here. So that was 14mm pipe joiner. I tried a 1/2 inch, which was 13mm, and it was too narrow. Although this is worth a lot of money on eBay, second hand, so I'll probably sell that. Another day, this time it's not raining. I've reassembled the cylinder cover, having not removed the first cover. I gave up. I'm going to do the valve clearances later when I've actually got a problem, because if I separate it now, I could end up in a world of pain. I've reassembled my inlet manifold, my elbows are here, so the heater screen's gone, so don't have that in the way anymore. Slight restriction removed. I still have the relay in there though, so this relay is what powers the heater screen, tiny relay there, so I'll leave that disconnected, and that's the bolt that it normally goes onto, so I'll leave that off. I've taken all my cloths out of my piping. That's very important. You don't want to start your engine and suck all that in, or sook as we would say in Scotland, sook it in. So I now just got to make sure I've got all my little vacuum lines reconnected. I'm going to stick a bolt in that, same way as I did with the Swirl flat one. That's the Swirl flat bolt that's been in there for months now, so I could be pretty confident that the system wouldn't throw any engine management lights with no access to the swirl flaps, because they've been off for months and I've had no issue. A little tip with the loom, it's actually quite straightforward. I found this really intimidating the first time I did it, but what I have observed is once you've got the loom in place, if you've got a couple of plugs which are obvious, the whole thing starts to just come together really easily. It's like around this side, once the once the loom is over the top here, this plug, there's only one place that it can go. It can't reach any other plugs, so you stick that one in, and then you realise, right, okay, well these could only possibly reach these two plugs, and they're different shapes and different colours. Toyota has made it so that any plug that's nearby is a different shape, and so you can't possibly get them wrong. Like this one is to go into the swirl flap vacuum actuator, and this one stretches all the way over here, and it's unique to the viscous coupler. So once that's in place, all of these other ones are pretty obvious where that they should plug into. So there was a couple of times in the darkness where I lost track of where a loom plug should go, but once you get a few, this was one that I lost. I was like, why do I have this dangling down here? And it's because I had this vacuum piece was in a box, and I was like, there's something missing. So anyway, looms look difficult, but once you start to plug them in with a Toyota, it just gets easier and easier. Right, next I'm going to finish connecting my vacuums with some bolts, get the inlet pipes back on, which I have tidied up. You know, these have all been degreased now. I'm very impressed with how these turned out. So I'll get them reconnected. I've got a couple of Jubilee clamps that I'm going to replace as well, and we'll get it plumbed back in for a test start. Almost done. While I'm in here, it would be rude not to put a new filter on it. This is an aftermarket one, but we've got a supplier here in the UK called Rough Tracks, who do fantastic range of OEM quality replacements. So this is an AMC filter, and I'm replacing it with another AMC filter, but this time the mesh is on the outside and the inside, whereas the old one, mesh inside, just paper outside. So get that in, write the date on to create a little paper trail for the future owner, which will be me. We'll get this thing bolted back together and we'll do a test run and see if we've broken anything. A couple of little bits and pieces are rattling because they're not bolted down. No smoke, it's always a good sign. Do have an engine management light. I'll get the laptop plugged into it and figure out what the ECU light is. I wasn't expecting an engine management light. I wonder if it could possibly be this loom plug from the swirl flap actuators that is not plugged in. Maybe that'll fix it. I'll give it another start. Light's still there. I'll get the laptop. I know what my engine management light is. Can you see it? No math plugged in. I thought that it was something over here, like, you know, this one that I'd forgotten to plug in. I mean, nothing's connected at the moment while I'm testing, but I thought it was that, but nope, I just forgot to plug the math in. Let's try again now. Immediately fixed it. I didn't even have to do my tech stream. Thank goodness, because tech stream's a nightmare. I'll do a tutorial on how I got this working, because tech stream's really hard to get set up nowadays. You've got to do virtual machines and stuff. So if folks want some help with tech stream, I will do a guide. I'm just doing a bit of a test ride now. There's no discernible difference really in power or sound or anything like that. Well folks, because I'm a bungling idiot, along my journey here, I forgot to reconnect the brown plug down here, which came out because the clip is broken, so I've just put a cable tie on to hold it in place. That was unplugged, and I am assuming that was doing something with the boost control and stopping the car from getting full boost. And the other thing is this sensor plug here, which I'm guessing is inlet manifold pressure after the inlet delete pipe that I've done. At some point in all of this, 3 different plugs were disconnected. So I'm a blithering idiot, and just, you know, check your plugs are installed, because otherwise you might think you've broken something and you haven't. You're just being an idiot. The unfortunate thing is that I now have a diesel leak here. So I'll have to find out what's going on there. And there's a very real possibility that I'll have to strip all this off and do it again. I'll just have a bit more work to do now in order to get this engine not leaking diesel. Oh, the joy of 20-year-old vehicles. Fortunately, it's the low pressure return line that was dripping, not anything major like those injector lines. Folks say that you have to replace them every time you have them off the car, but that's not really the case. I think that's just people who want you to spend £600 on new injector lines. So that's a success. Car's not really driving any differently, but I'll know that I no longer have swirl flaps and EGR getting clogged up on the car. 200,000 miles on this now, or at least it will be in about a week's time. It'll hit 200,000. So I'm glad to have it a bit more reliable by deleting some of those parts that get clogged up. So after initially thinking that I had created a power problem, some sort of inlet restriction with the changes that I'd made, now the car feels basically the same as it was. I can't tell any difference in power or torque with the car. I would have liked to feel a bit of extra power, but I'm happy that I just haven't made it worse. So that's now EGR delete, swirl flap delete, inlet heater delete, and I've blocked off the EGR cooler and taken that pipe away. In theory, more reliability, less carbon build-up. No real difference that I can measure in power or torque or anything like that, but that's fine. Would I recommend this job? If you're in there anyway, and if you suspect that the car has a lot of carbon build-up, it certainly can't hurt to dismantle it and give it a good clean out. But it's a lot of work. It's not for the faint of heart. If you have any questions or comments about the process, please do let me know. Thanks everyone for watching. If you learned something from this video, that's great. That's the point. I make these videos for fun and to help educate the Land Cruiser community if I can. Thank you for watching. If you made it all the way to the end, stay safe, make good decisions if you can, and I'll see you in another video. And I'm going inside because the weather is being very Scottish at the moment and I'm about to get soaked. Bye everyone.